Start recording. Okay, so just some admin things. It is December 28th, Tuesday. We're talking about prototype things, getting ready to start prototype for Better Kahoot or RCL is what we're calling it right now. So your question was, Dylan, if I had an empty string for user ID, what would happen?
Yeah.
It would input it. An empty string is still a string. The only time that this would be skipped over is if it was the wrong type. So a number, an array, a bool, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So there's that. I was finishing up, so let's go ahead and open this for.
So, like it does not keep user ID. User ID is not a part of the document if it's mismatch type.
Yeah, so under that scenario, you would get the document ID, which is right here, a first name, a last name, a student name, but not a user ID
Okay.
or student ID. And now that I'm thinking about it, was there a reason why I had student ID and user ID? I don't think so. Maybe it'll come up later.
What about if the user is a professor?
We have a separate collection for professor. It's right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, delete that. Okay, so this is what I really wanted to point out to you over here. You see this file structure?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the prototype file structure and what I've been working on for the morning here. Just getting a lot of the wiring done so he can actually function properly. Because one of the things I've noticed about your work in particular is that you get on a path and then you start heading down this path and you try to solve one problem at a time and then you step back for a second and go, okay, what abomination did I create? Because now it's really hard to maintain,
Right.
uh, which is fine. That's part of the process. But uh, before we got into that problem where, okay, yeah, I have uh, 3 or 4 functions in this single thing that probably should have been a different function for each one. Uh, I've essentially made a framework for you to keep yourself somewhat organized. So I still got to do the rest of the database functions, but okay. So we got the app JS, which is our server. So we're running on 443, which is HTTPS. Okay, we got cores in here. Notice that we're only accepting from localhost right now. So we're going to have to change that when we make this server available to other people in the school.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Is cores needed in this particular case, or because I
It's
wasn't
it's standard
sure.
procedure for security reasons. So do you
Oh,
remember
okay.
what cores is?
It doesn't allow if you have it. I can't remember if it's enabled, but the cross access control allow right cross origin um something something, which it sets the option of if requests can be made from different domains
Right, and we're
if
setting
it's
it to
allowed or
no because we're doing it from localhost right now. So this is a way to control who actually has access to the server itself. Um, so as long as this is coming from, we might have a problem with this actually. I'm not sure. Interesting. Anyways, um, yeah, so we'll leave it like this for now because we're going to do a spa, but I plan on doing a progressive web app. So this might be a problem in the future, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But anyways, what this is saying is we're allowing origin access from localhost. Okay. Our server headers is going to be obviously origin, cross request, content type, accept, and authorization. Okay, request method is method, and then all of these. So these are your HTTP request types. So I'm allowing all of them here, which
Would you? Oh, sorry for interrupting.
mm,
How would you best, or what would you suggest for to learn this kind of stuff? Is it like just memor? Well, I don't want to say memorize the code, but like, is it just something you pick up as time goes on?
sort of. So this type of stuff I don't have memorized. I just copy and paste it because I've solved this problem once. Um, but there's docs for basically everything. So let's go ahead and pull this up. If you needed cores, since we're talking about that now, cores Node.js should pull up the Node. Okay, well, Express, we're using Express, but okay, cores, install cores, Express, blah, 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 blah. App.use cores, configuring cores, cores options. Okay, so this is just Express. So let's pull up the Node.js docs here. Okay, we're using 16, I believe. And then I'm going to search for cores. All right. This is where you start going into articles. Okay, so they're doing it like this, origin. Here are the things that we can accept from anything. Okay, so this is the hyper simplistic way of doing it. The way I got it here, and I forgot where I found this at this point, but I like this way better because I can control who gets in, I can control what headers I'm accepting, and then I can control what type of request that I actually
Right.
want. So this is a more thorough example. Okay, uh, down here. Okay, yeah, this is still prototype, so I haven't set this yet. But here's an example of your static file routes. So when you get something from the client that has a slash image, I'm telling it to look in client images folder. So that would be, I don't have it here because it's not in client anymore. It'd be models, images right here.
So what's the models folder used for?
Models folder, so let's back up. Client, controller, views. Okay, so this is what you need to focus on. Views, models, and controllers. So what this, well actually MVC, but model view controller, that is a paradigm where this is how you organize your code. All your views are your HTML files that goes to the client. Okay? All your models is where you manipulate data on the server. Okay, so basically this is where all your server stuff goes. And then your controller ends up being your, what I call a router, but I named it here controller just to make it clear for the people that are going to be jumping in for MVC. But it's your controller that goes, okay, here's sign up. I want you to do something with that post request for sign up. Here's sign in, here's sign out. Here's the route of professor that is not necessarily descriptive, But for post, what we're going to do is create a new profile for professor. Patch, we're going to edit that professor profile. Okay, same thing with student. Okay, same thing with questions in terms of the questions that people create. Um, yeah, and that's what it ends up being. So what this ultimately does is I'm going to call a function from here. It's going to go to one of these models. It's going to return me the value that I need. And if I need to do something with that returned value, then I call the next function. If not, I send it back to the client. And if there's nothing to send back, I send back a status code of 200 stating that everything was good. In our case, we're actually going to send back JSON if it errored or not, and then we're going to have on our client um, little messages that said, yeah, this operation was successful. That type of idea.
Will we be using sessions?
No, probably be using cookies.
Okay.
I haven't had a need to
Uh,
use a session yet.
when you do, so then how do you do the um? Because what's nice with sessions is you can put the session ID in a cookie, and then you can write that session ID to um the database. So like if the server goes online, all you'd have to, or if the server goes offline, you just pull from there, and then that way all stored data associated with that session ID would still be, or could be put back into memory. So that way, like on the client side, you can keep track of who's who.
Well, a cookie is always sent with a post call or actually
Right.
any type of HTTPS or HTTP request. So you really don't need a session as long as that's stored in a cookie. Um, yeah, I don't see the value in a session until you need a timed, hey, I want this session to expire and then this person needs to log in again after this amount of time. Uh,
Oh,
mo-
okay.
yeah, most applications, perpetual login is a thing, and outside of secure environments, which this is not a hyper secure type of application, um, I don't see much of a use for a session, but I could be wrong because I haven't used it a whole lot. But uh, yeah, I tend to use encrypted cookies.
All right. I was just curious because as I was going through and trying to learn new stuff, I didn't want to like go too far off. Um,
No, I
and
mean that something like that you need to be aware of and make sure it's there because there may be a condition where hey it is the thing that we need to focus on at the moment because it makes sense in this particular condition. But if you don't know it exists, you're never going to consider it. So no, it's fine. So there's that. There's your controller. Okay. Again, I haven't gotten to the database functions yet, so I need to do that by the end of the day. And then custom tools is some of the things that I've worked on over time that could be used for this project, in particular image here. So we have save profile image, okay, uh, and then save class image, save topic image, and basically the difference between these is the path that it goes to. And then I used save image to actually physically save it. So there's some work that you don't have to do right there.
so you are using the file system um
Yeah, you have to.
class.
Yeah, file system. Also using GIMP for image manipulation. So there's there's that. Hashing. You were asking about hashing the other day. SHA-256, crypto, create HVAC. Okay, update password, return password. So there's your hash password that I'm assuming you were asking for because
Yeah.
you wanted to hash a password. Um, get object ID. So this is what we're going to be using for the MongoDB IDs instead of using the built-in Mongo ID one, because I've always had an issue trying to get something by ID using that. So I don't know what I was doing wrong in the past, but this is how I've gotten around it, where I just made my own ID. Okay, date time. There's a bunch of things in here too that might be helpful. Okay, create readable day based off of milliseconds. So new date, local time. Right, there's milliseconds. So, and then this returns something that's readable in terms of like month, day, year type of thing. Bunch of other things in here I've collected over time. Get week ID, get month days, which I'm assuming are, yeah, so this tells me how many days in a month there are. Okay, get day ID, main controller. Okay, client, for you, you're probably not going to be working in this a whole lot unless you request for it. But there is a lot of work to be done in here. So between Sarah and I, we're going to be spending a lot of time here. But also notice that there's only one view because we're going to be creating a spa. And again, that's why I'm going to be working with Sarah quite a bit on this because it's going to be a lot of JavaScript and concepts that we just simply haven't covered yet. Any questions?
Um, None so far. I'd have to look at, or how would you recommend going through and trying to? Because afterwards, I'm gonna have to go through and learn. How would you recommend I approach trying to figure out um the code?
Well, the only thing I've noticed from you is it seems like the resources that you get are from random people offline, and I'm assuming you're getting them from like forums or like Stack Overflow. Is that right?
Part of it's forms. The MongoDB stuff. That was a mixture of um WebMD and then YouTube.
Okay. So WebMD might be okay, but typically what you want to do is go directly to the docs that you're trying to work in. So let's use GIMP for example, because we were just doing that, and I'm relatively certain that you've never used GIMP.
I
So
have not.
Node.js GIMP docs, going to come up with npm. Okay. This is where you should always start first, directly from the source. So directly from them, how do they do it, right? Uh, because obviously the creators should know what they're talking about. Um, Occasionally not, but this is a pretty good starting point. But yeah, I would start here. And then if there's something that is not covered in their docs, then you go, okay, I'm going to go to a reputable source like this, LinkedIn Learning, Node.js GIMP. Hopefully something's in here. Node.js GIMP. Okay, I don't see anything here. And this is where I would do Node.js GIMP and just Google it. GitHub, no. Geek for Geeks. Okay, pretty good site. Never heard of this. Never heard of this. Okay, tutorial point, heard of. Okay. Okay, installing. Okay, that wasn't super helpful. This is also not super helpful. Yeah, so something like this, which is a library, if it's not in the docs itself, then you're going to have to do some extrapolation and then go, okay, well, what functions do you have? Let's start combining some of these to get to the point that we want to get to, and go from there. Because right here is your basic usage. You could probably extrapolate from here. So read.then, this immediately tells you that it's a asynchronous function. Catch. Okay, so here's a path. Here is a web request, reading from a buffer. Okay, read URL headers if you want. So this is probably a fetch request just inside of a read. Okay, custom constructor. Never had to use this, but okay. Okay, so this is probably the most useful bit of documentation here, where it tells you, hey, these are all the functions based off of after you made that image, after it's read, this is what you can do to it. Right? And most of the time you don't need these, but if I need to know if it has an alpha channel, well, does it have an alpha channel? It's probably going to return a bool. So, and it doesn't tell me if it returns a bool or not. Worst case scenario is you try it and see what you get back. But resize. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of how you do it. You start with the docs, wherever it came from. And I'll give you another example here. If I do web components, like this. Okay, webcomponents.org, which is probably the spec. MDN. No, not Wicca, not academia, not React. And YouTube should be like your last thing, really. Unless there's something you're missing about the environment that you're setting up, then maybe YouTube can be helpful, but you really want to start at the docs. Developer Google, okay, webcomponents.dev. So these are a little bit nicer. Okay, polyfills, introduction, custom element specs, okay, HTML templates. Okay, so this is the spec itself, which is helpful occasionally if you're running into problems that you don't think are your fault. Then concepts and usage. MDN is probably the best web component source right now. So you'd have to use all of these using templates and slots. Let's come over here, template. Okay, element ID, my paragraph, content, pen child, so on and so forth. All right. Okay, right. So here's your slot. Bang. So yeah, that's typically how you want to do it. You want to go directly to the source, whatever that concept is, and most of the time it's a library. And then once, if that source doesn't have what you want for some reason, then you go to reputable articles, and then YouTube after that. The only exception would be if you're trying to learn something just like overall. It's more helpful to do a video that teach you the ropes in general. These essential training ones are pretty good. And then, where's content? Transcript. Not it.
In the last lesson, we created and
content.
ran our first Node.js file.
Okay. So then you can go through here and go, all right, I actually do need to set up my environment here, or okay, we got a global object, all right, that's different from Java, right? Okay, standard output, standard input, right? Where you start getting your foundations down, where you can actually make something. Okay, create a module.
Remember the collect
How
whatever
do we
they
do
want.
that? Let's do that. Module exports. Okay, so if I come back over here, oh, and then I open up date time export function. Let's go back up here, module.exports. That looks familiar, doesn't it? So that's where you kind of learn like the basics, like how to actually function within a language. Videos are super helpful for that, but in terms of I'm trying to do this thing like very precisely, they're not very helpful for. Any questions?
None right now.
Okay. So I got to finish up these right through here. And then we should be relatively good to go to start on the prototype itself. So I'm going to have to work with Sarah, obviously, to get you information. But for the time being, you might want to just create some test data and make sure that your wiring works. So when you actually get something from the client, that it actually works and you can move on. So, yeah. I don't know what else to say about this besides a lot of the wiring has been done in terms of the framework itself. Now you just need to get the right data to the right spot. Make sense?
Yeah,
Okay. Have you heard anything from Mike White?
I haven't. I was gonna message him today. I wasn't sure exactly with the stuff that I was doing. I didn't know how far off the path I went, and I didn't want to like confuse anybody.
Okay, well, you need to communicate with people if you're going to go off like that, because uh, he has no idea what's going on. So you definitely need to communicate better when it comes to things like that. You have to let people know what their intent is, or what your intent is, so they can plan around it instead of just being lost.
Okay.
So yeah, reach out to him. Say that, hey, we got this thing going on here. Within the little framework that I got you set up here, do what you think is correct, and then we can review on if it's actually a good way to solve that problem or not. So let's go ahead and test something real quick. I'm going to open up a live share.
To test the routes, would you recommend just using Postman to do it?
Sure, that'll work. Where is... Okay, see if that works for you.
It worked.
Okay, so what we'll do is if you want your own copy, I can send you one, but anything official is going to go on to this copy that I have on my computer. I don't turn this off, so you're going to have access to it 24/7, which is fine. Yeah, did you want a copy of this, or are you just going to work within this
I could
file?
work with him.
Okay.
Yeah, I can work with him. I'll use Postman to do the route testing, and